Neon hums at a harbor diner. A single mom
I saw
finds an
you
old
take
wallet,
it. I
cash
didn't.
stacked, a faded
Let her
photo,
speak, Walt.
a pressed violet from 1979.
This is unacceptable
Cameras catch
behavior,
her
Riley.
hesitating.
Sir,
Sir, I just
Manager
found it.
screams,
thank you,
thief.
dear. I thought I'd lost it for
Tonight
good.
she knocks the shame back with the man who owned that memory. Morning came early at Blue Harbor Diner, as it always did, bringing with it the soft neon hum of the sign outside and the low buzz of the prep crew unlocking the back door. For Riley Santos, the day started not with an alarm, but with her 7-year-old son, Kai's coughing fit. Sharp, shallow breaths that sliced the silence of their cramped apartment. She fumbled for the nebulizer in the half-light, held it steady as he wheezed through the medicine, her own breathing tight until his calmed. Another night survived. Another morning owed. She checked her phone. 2 texts from the landlord. 1 final notice for rent. The screen glowed coldly. She'd meant to get more hours last week, but the diner's schedule was carved by someone who never worried about asthma or overdue bills. The only certainty was that it would never be enough. At 5:55 a.m., Riley slipped on her faded blue uniform, shoes still sticky with yesterday's syrup. She double-checked Kai's inhaler in his backpack, the insurance card tucked behind it, and left him sleeping in the care of old Mrs. Crowley across the hall. Then she hurried down 2 flights of cracked stairs, her lungs aching in the city's muggy air, hoping today would pass quickly, hoping for nothing to go wrong. Inside the Blue Harbor Diner, the world was made of clatter, plates stacked, coffee brewed, the sizzle of bacon, the worn linoleum floors buffed to a dull shine. Riley moved through it all on muscle memory, every gesture practiced and automatic. She tied her apron behind her back, forced a smile for the early regulars, and began pouring coffee into chipped mugs. Walt Granger, the manager, barked orders from behind the counter, clutching his precious binder of rules like a talisman. Every policy, every form, every section highlighted and underlined. To him, Blue Harbor was a machine. Employees in, wages out, no surprises, no slack. He kept a running list in his head. Napkins used, condiments wasted, minutes late. Riley knew better than to give him a reason to add her name. Only Dee Park, her co-worker, made the place bearable. Dee, heavy-set and quick-witted, always with a stash of candy and an ear for complaints. "You look like you haven't slept since 2019, Dee joked, sliding her a wrapped caramel. Riley smiled, but her eyes drifted to the clock. 14 hours to go. Breakfast rush blurred into late morning. Tourists with maps, contractors with muddy boots, a mother with a cranky toddler. Riley floated between tables, balancing trays, jotting orders, making change. Her mind counted down bills and paychecks, insurance and prescriptions, math she could never quite make work. She barely noticed the old man in the corner booth. Alone reading a battered paperback, he ordered black coffee and oatmeal. His voice was gentle, but his eyes seemed elsewhere. He tipped well, left quietly. Only after the lunch crowd began trickling in did Riley remember the table. She carried a bin of dirty dishes to the back, then returned to the corner booth to wipe it down. As she slid a hand along the vinyl seat, her fingers caught on something hard, wedged deep in the crack between cushion and wall. She tugged it free. It was an old leather wallet, scuffed at the edges, heavy in her palm. Her heartbeat stumbled. She glanced around. The man was gone, and the place was too busy for anyone to notice her standing frozen by a booth. Riley's first instinct was practical. Lost and found. Company policy, page 7. But the heft of the wallet, the thickness, something about it unsettled her. She glanced at the clock. Only 10 minutes until the next break. Then she could turn it in. But Walt was arguing on the phone in his office. Door slammed shut. She pressed the wallet into her apron pocket, the weight anchoring her with a new worry. Somewhere, a coffee cup shattered, and the room erupted in voices. Riley blinked, forced her hands to move, to finish cleaning, to greet the next customer. But the wallet felt like a secret burning through her uniform, a silent question. What would you do if no one was watching? The morning light streamed through the blinds, striping the checkered floor in gold. Outside, life went on. Seagulls circling the harbor, ships slipping quietly out to sea. Inside, Riley Santos faced another impossible day, carrying more than just plates and coffee, but a choice that would shape everything to come. Riley ducked into the narrow hallway between the kitchen and the break room, heart thudding. For a moment, she stood half in shadow, thumb tracing the worn seam of the wallet she'd found. A part of her wanted to hand it off immediately, just to be rid of the burden. But Walt's voice boomed behind the glass door, still locked in his endless debate with the produce supplier. She was invisible to him, as always. She glanced around. The wallet was old, real leather, faded but well cared for, a rich chestnut color. Her fingers trembled as she unfastened the clasp, curiosity tugging her further. Inside, the first thing she saw was the cash. Fat stacks of $100 bills, crisp and untouched, pressed together in a neat band. Riley blinked, her mind spinning. This wasn't a forgotten 20 or a few loose singles. This was a lifeline. Rent, groceries, the next 3 months of asthma meds for Kai, all solved in an instant. But even as her mind raced, something else caught her eye. A glint of silver from a platinum credit card tucked in the fold. She squinted at the name. Harrison Lowe. It didn't ring any bells. Underneath, she found a folded photograph. 2 people on a bench, grinning in the soft haze of afternoon sunlight. The woman's hair was bright, her smile radiant. The man beside her, younger but unmistakable, was the customer from this morning. Riley's thumb traced the handwriting on the back. H&L, Our Bench, 1979. Pressed inside the photo was a single violet petal, its color faded but still gentle and distinct. Someone had kept this for decades. This wasn't just a wallet. This was someone's private history, carried every day, closer than family. Riley felt a tightening in her chest, something tender and unspoken. The cash was tempting, but this keepsake turned the find into something sacred. She remembered her own moments. Kai's first drawing taped to the fridge, a single tiny sock left behind after a hospital visit. Ordinary things, but heavy with meaning. She couldn't take this. No matter how much she needed the money, she knew it would haunt her. Acting on impulse, Riley took out her phone and snapped a quick photo of the wallet's contents. Cash, card, photo, petal. Her only proof that she hadn't taken a thing. If anything went wrong, at least she'd have some kind of evidence. The diner's clamor grew behind her. The sizzle of fries, the clang of dishes, the familiar chaos of mid-morning. She closed the wallet carefully, slipping it deep in her apron pocket. All she had to do was hand it to Walt as soon as he was free. Policy was policy, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Just as she stepped toward the manager's office, Riley saw Walt through the glass, his face red, pacing and waving a stack of paperwork as he shouted into the phone. He didn't look up. She hesitated, holding the wallet like a hot coal, suddenly aware of every camera in the diner, mounted above the soda machine, tucked behind the register, always watching. Her heart hammered. What if someone got the wrong idea? Riley hovered by the door, but Walt's ranting grew louder. It was clear he wouldn't be available soon. She retreated, deciding to wait out his storm rather than interrupt and risk more of his temper. Maybe in 5 minutes, maybe 10, he'd calm down. A customer waved for a refill, and Riley forced herself back into the rhythm. Smile, pour, clear, repeat. But the wallet pressed heavy against her hip. A reminder of how quickly life can pivot. All around her, life at Blue Harbor churned forward, oblivious. As she finished wiping down another table, her phone buzzed. Just a low vibration in her pocket, but enough to break her focus. Rent overdue. The world outside pressed in again, harsh and real. In the office, Walt slammed his door, the glass rattling. Riley took a shaky breath, steeling herself to do the right thing. Minutes crawled by. Riley felt every second tick beneath her skin, the wallet a growing weight in her apron. She kept serving, her smile a practiced mask, heart beating too fast as she tried to focus on the blur of customers, coffee cups, crumpled napkins. Dee flashed her a look of concern from the soda machine. Riley couldn't meet her eyes. Every step, every turn, the wallet pressed its shape into her hip, cold and accusing. She glanced at the clock above the register. 22 minutes since she'd found the wallet. In that time, Walt's office door had remained firmly shut. He was now hunched at his desk, phone cradled between shoulder and ear, mouthing silent curses at his computer screen. Riley rehearsed what she would say, how she'd explain, but her words tangled and vanished. She tried not to think about how closely the security cameras tracked every move. Then, suddenly, the storm broke. Walt slammed the phone onto its cradle, muttering about idiots and invoices. He spotted Riley hovering by the office, eyes darting from her to the apron bulge. His gaze sharpened. "Morales!" he barked, using her last name like a weapon. "In my office! Now!" The diner fell quiet. Conversations paused, forks hovering mid-air. Riley's cheeks flushed as she crossed the floor, aware of every eye following her. She stepped into the cramped office. Walt shut the door behind her, his hand heavy on the knob. Before she could speak, he jabbed a thick finger at the monitor on his desk. "You want to explain this?" He clicked back through footage, timestamp blinking in the corner. Riley watched herself on the black and white screen, clearing the booth, pulling out the wallet, slipping it into her apron, continuing her shift. She opened her mouth to explain, but Walt talked right over her. 22 minutes. You handled 3 tables, poured 6 coffees, and didn't turn in lost property. That's company policy, page 7, Morales. That's intent to steal. Riley's chest tightened. "I was waiting for you to get off the phone," she tried, voice cracking. "I was just trying to—" Walt snorted. "Spare me. You knew what you were doing. You even went into the break room, only place with no camera. Funny, isn't it?" His eyes glimmered, hungry for power. She fumbled for her phone, opened the photo she'd snapped of the wallet's contents, tried to hold it out. "I took this for proof in case—" He waved it away, refusing to look. "Too little, too late. I don't tolerate thieves in my diner." A knock sounded, then the door flew open. Dee stood in the doorway, eyes wide with worry. Behind her, the hum of whispers grew, a customer near the counter raising their phone to record. Walt puffed out his chest, voice booming so everyone could hear. Let this be a lesson. We run a clean operation. Anyone who thinks they can take what isn't theirs is out. Morales, you're fired. Pack your things and get out. Riley's ears rang. For a second, she just stood there, hands empty, heart hollow. She wanted to fight, to scream, but no words came. Walt turned to Dee, still loud enough for all to hear. You see what happens when you break trust? The world outside the glass office seemed to dissolve, voices, faces, all blurring together. Riley walked out, past the kitchen, past Dee's outstretched hand, past the sea of stares and mutters. She could feel the words sticking to her back as she left. Thief. She gathered her purse and her worn sweater from her locker, numb to the finality of the moment. Her feet carried her out through the front doors into harsh daylight, the sound of the diner's bell ringing her exit, the whispers following her like a shadow. Behind her, a customer's phone was still recording. The apartment was silent except for the thump of Riley's shoes on the old linoleum. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and damp, the windows fogged from the morning's rain. She dropped her purse on the kitchen table, numb, the word fired echoing in her mind. The afternoon sun filtered through a rip in the curtains, drawing faded lines across a clutter of overdue bills and a half-empty bottle of asthma medication. On the fridge, taped beside Kai's crayon masterpiece, a rocket ship, 2 stick figures waving from the window, was a new notice. She peeled it off, hands shaking. Eviction, typed in all caps. Pay or quit, it read. The deadline circled in red. Her chest tightened. There was no money left, not for rent, not for medicine, not for anything. From the bedroom, a soft cough, a small, fragile sound, brought her back. She rushed in to find Kai curled up, blanket pulled to his chin, eyes glassy. He forced a smile. Hey, Mom. His voice was thin, scratchy. Riley sat beside him, brushed damp hair from his forehead. How's your chest? He shrugged. Okay, I guess. He reached for the inhaler on the nightstand, used it with the expertise of a child far too used to hospitals. Mrs. Crowley gave me toast, he added, as if trying to help. She smiled, heart aching. You're a champ. But the smile vanished as she noticed the empty blister pack of medication. 1 dose left, maybe 2 if she stretched it. Kai's eyes searched hers, picking up on something unspoken. Did you have a bad day? She hesitated. A little. I'll fix it. I promise. The promise was empty, but she couldn't bear to let him see how close things were to falling apart. He nodded, closing his eyes. Within minutes, he drifted into a shallow sleep, breath whistling in the silence. Riley slipped out, pulled out her phone and scrolled desperately through job listings, overnight warehouse shifts, temp agencies, cleaning gigs, things she'd done before. Each one meant leaving Kai alone at night, risking more missed school, more asthma attacks. She tried to imagine calling her mom back in Bakersfield for help, but the distance between them felt bigger than geography. She opened her photo gallery. There, proof, the picture she'd snapped of the wallet's contents. The neat stack of bills, the platinum card, the faded photograph with the violet petal. If she'd really meant to steal, why would she have bothered with proof? Her jaw tightened. No one at the diner had cared. The day dragged on, heavy and aimless. She paid a bill online, moved pennies between accounts, stared at the eviction notice until the numbers blurred. The sky outside darkened. Somewhere, a police siren wailed, fading into the city's low rumble. Night fell. Riley reheated leftover soup, coaxed Kai to eat a few spoonfuls, changed his sheets. After he fell asleep again, she sat at the table and stared into nothing, replaying every minute at the diner. She wondered if the customer who filmed her firing would upload the video, or if it would disappear into digital oblivion. The shame lingered, bitter and raw. A sudden knock jolted her from the spiral. Not the rapid, angry rattle of the landlord, not the casual tap of Mrs. Crowley. 3 deliberate, measured knocks, solid, heavy. Riley froze, a surge of panic prickling up her spine. Her mind raced. Police? Social services? Someone from the diner? She tiptoed to the door and pressed her eye to the peephole. All she could see was the blurred outline of a man in a dark coat, waiting, unmoving. Her breath caught. Whoever it was, he wasn't leaving. The knock came again, 3 firm beats that rattled the door on its hinges. Riley's hand hovered at the latch, torn between fear and curiosity. Through the peephole, the man's silhouette was clearer now, older, tall but a little stooped, his coat collar turned up against the chill. His presence felt patient, almost gentle. She hesitated. What if it was someone sent by Walt, or the landlord come to serve her notice in person? But something in the stillness, a kind of quiet dignity, made her unlock the chain, just enough to crack the door. Ms. Santos? His voice was steady, unhurried, nothing like Walt's bark or the landlord's impatience. My name is Harrison Lowe. I believe you found my wallet today at Blue Harbor. For a split second, Riley couldn't speak. Her mind flashed to the photo, the violet petal, the heavy decision she'd carried all day. Her words tangled. I didn't take anything, I swear. I was going to turn it in. The manager, her voice cracked. Harrison raised his hand, palm open. I know. Just 2 words, but they landed softly, like a promise. May I come in? I won't stay long. Riley hesitated, but his expression held no threat. Only exhaustion, and maybe a trace of sadness. She stepped back, letting him cross the threshold into her worn living room. He took everything in at a glance. The peeling paint, Kai's inhaler on the table, the eviction notice. He didn't comment, just settled into the armchair she offered. I'm not here for the money, he said, looking her in the eye. I came back to the diner this afternoon. Walt, your manager, bragged about catching a thief, but something in the way he told it felt off. He paused, studying her face. So I asked to see the footage. It's clear you waited to hand over my wallet. It's clear you never touched $1. Riley's relief was almost overwhelming, her knees trembling as she sat. Thank you for believing me, she managed, voice thick. Harrison nodded. There was never a question. The only things that matter to me in that wallet are the photograph of my late wife, Lena. His fingers tightened on the armrest. And the violet petal. We picked it on our first date, at a little park bench in Portland. The cash, it's nothing. He let out a quiet, tired laugh. To most people, it'd change their lives. But memories, those are irreplaceable. He fell silent, eyes drifting to Kai's room, too, where the soft rasp of the child's breathing filled the apartment. I suspended Walt as soon as I left the diner. He's done. His voice was harder now, carrying the weight of someone used to making difficult decisions. But I need you to help me with something much harder than firing a manager. Riley's brow furrowed. Help? How? He met her gaze. The damage Walt did, calling you a thief in front of everyone, humiliating you. It can't be fixed with just an apology. The staff, the regulars, even some customers, they all saw it, and some even filmed it. I want to set things right. But it only works if you come back with me, then if you clear your name in public. I'll be there with you, but it has to be you. Riley's pulse raced. Go back? Face everyone who'd whispered, who'd watched her walk out in disgrace? The very idea made her hands shake. But when she looked at Kai's inhaler and the nearly empty medicine bottle, the choice became simpler. Dignity wasn't just pride. It was about her son's future. Harrison stood to leave. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning, if you're willing. We'll do this together. And no matter what happens, I promise, your story won't end with someone else's mistake. At the door, he paused, giving her a look of quiet encouragement. Rest if you can. You'll need your strength. As the door clicked shut behind him, Riley let herself breathe. For the first time since the world had flipped upside down, she felt the tiniest flicker of hope. Morning brought a dull ache behind Riley's eyes, and the kind of cold resolve she remembered from long nights in hospital waiting rooms. She dressed quietly, left a note for Mrs. Crowley to watch Kai, and waited at the window. When Harrison's car pulled up, she steeled herself and slipped outside, heart pounding as the city blinked awake. Blue Harbor looked different now, colder, smaller. The neon sign flickering above the door like a warning. As Harrison led her inside, the usual morning rush had already started. Heads turned. The same faces who had watched her leave now looked up from pancakes and coffee, some with curiosity, some with judgment, some, like Dee's, with barely concealed relief. Harrison spoke first, voice steady but carrying a weight that filled the diner. May I have everyone's attention? The chatter faded. Yesterday, something happened here that never should have. I want to set the record straight, in front of everyone. He motioned Riley forward. Her hands shook as she set her phone on the counter. The photo she'd taken of the wallet ready to show. Harrison turned to Walt's old office and gestured for the assistant manager to roll out the security footage. On the screen, the grainy video played, Riley finding the wallet, waiting for Walt, serving tables, hesitating at the office door. No sign of theft, just a tired woman doing her best. A low murmur ran through the crowd. Dee stepped forward, voice clear. I saw the whole thing. Riley never touched $1. She tried to do the right thing. Walt. He twisted everything. From a booth, a regular customer stood up, holding their phone. I filmed it too. She was trying to explain. Walt wouldn't listen. Harrison nodded, then turned to Riley. You have the floor. She swallowed hard, feeling every eye on her. Company policy says we turn lost property over to the manager immediately. I know that. But when the person in charge doesn't listen, when they'd rather punish than help, it doesn't matter how good the policy is. The way it was enforced turned me into a criminal in front of my friends and neighbors. Silence settled, heavy and real. A line cook wiped his eyes on his sleeve. Dee squeezed Riley's arm, whispering, That's the truth, honey. Harrison stepped up again. Riley's right. Policies matter, but people matter more. I failed to make sure my managers understand both. He paused, letting the weight of the moment land. Which is why I need help, honest help. If you could change anything, where would you start? The question lingered in the air, unexpected and open. Riley felt the words build in her chest, simple but certain. I'd start with trust and real accountability for everyone. A few customers nodded, the tension in the room softening. The diner's spell was broken. Whispers turned to cautious conversation, some offering Riley a shy smile, others looking away, ashamed. Harrison leaned in, voice low enough for only Riley to hear. You did something most people wouldn't. You stood up in the light. That's where real change starts. As the crowd slowly drifted back to their meals, Harrison handed her a small folder. Come with me. There's one more thing, something bigger than the diner, if you're willing. Riley gripped the folder, still not sure if her hands were steady or shaking. She'd come back to clear her name, but something told her this was just the beginning. Riley followed Harrison through the city, nerves crackling under her skin. The folder he'd handed her rested heavy in her lap. She opened it, scanning documents, employee complaints, tip discrepancies, emails about missing hours. The name Walt Granger popped up again and again. By the time they pulled into the Harbor Light Hospitality headquarters, Riley understood. This wasn't just about a wallet or one bad manager. It was about a pattern. Inside, the boardroom felt colder than any diner, the air humming with money and consequence. A half-circle of executives and HR reps waited, coffee untouched, eyes sharp behind their glasses. Walt sat at the end of the table, sullen and stiff, flanked by two lawyers. Harrison introduced Riley, his voice formal, but his hand gentle on her shoulder. HR began with the script. Company policy requires all lost property be surrendered to the manager. Ms. Santos failed to comply. That's why disciplinary action was taken. A murmur of agreement, as if the words themselves were ironclad. Walt sat up straighter, as if the policy would protect him from the room's growing doubt. Harrison broke in, cool and precise. What's missing from that statement is intent. What's missing is compassion and basic common sense. We're not here because of one mistake. We're here because our policies are designed for efficiency, not for humanity. Riley felt her throat tighten, but she cleared it and spoke. If you want people to trust this company, you have to trust them back. If a policy only works when everything goes right, it isn't good enough. She pulled out her phone, tapping the photo of the wallet, the proof she'd kept since that morning. An HR director frowned. If we relax procedures, we risk lawsuits. We need lost items accounted for in the manager's safe. Riley didn't back down. Or you could have a sealing protocol. 2 employees witness the found item, seal it in an envelope, time-stamped right at the table. No waiting on a manager behind a locked door, no blind spots. The room fell silent. A young exec scribbled notes. Riley pushed on. If a manager's unavailable, have a 5-minute hotline. Report the item, log it, move on. And, this is the hardest part, train every manager to apologize in public if they get it wrong. Not in the back office, not behind closed doors, in front of everyone who saw the mistake. Walt shifted in his seat, color draining from his face. HR looked to Harrison. Mr. Lowe, these changes, this is a complete overhaul. Harrison's voice was even, but carried a razor's edge. So is a lawsuit. So is a viral video. So is the cost of losing the trust of every customer who watched that firing happen. He nodded to the CFO. Run the numbers. Compare the cost of proper training with the cost of one bad story spreading. The silence stretched, heavy and electric. Riley saw, for the first time, real uncertainty on the board's faces. maybe even the flicker of regret. Riley looked down at her hands, steady for the first time in days. She'd spoken the truth, not just for herself, but for every worker who'd ever been dismissed or silenced by policy. As the meeting wrapped up, Harrison leaned over. "You just changed the conversation," he whispered. "But change only matters if it survives outside this room." Riley nodded, the beginnings of a new kind of courage stirring in her chest. The board's silence didn't last long. After a tense week, Harrison called Riley with a new proposal, a 30-day trial. She would become field integrity lead, overseeing 5 troubled diners. The goal wasn't just to watch managers, but to help change the culture. Riley hesitated. She'd never managed anyone, barely kept her own life afloat. But the thought of Kai's health, of maybe making work better for people like Dee, pushed her to accept. Her first day on the job was rough. At the Northside Diner, the manager barely looked at her. Staff eyed her like a spy, bracing for trouble. She introduced the new sealing protocol anyway. 2 employees, an envelope, a timestamp, right at the table for any lost item. Some rolled their eyes. But by the end of the week, a dishwasher found a ring, sealed it with the hostess, and a grateful customer left a glowing review online. The air felt different already. At each location, Riley faced resistance. One manager grumbled about soft skills. Another questioned her right to enforce anything. But after a barista made a public apology for a lost order, her own idea, inspired by Riley's push, tips doubled that night. Riley launched the Lena's Bench Fund, too, a quiet grant for employees in crisis. She used the story of the violet petal at each stop. "A keepsake matters more than any policy," she said. "Sometimes all someone needs is proof that they're seen." Complaints dropped, 41% by the end of the month. 5-star reviews surged. Revenue on weekends climbed. Families coming back for a place that felt safer, warmer. Even the board noticed. Harrison checked in with Riley twice a week, listening more than he talked, making sure she had what she needed. Still, there were long nights when doubt crept in. Riley missed Kai's bedtime more than once, the guilt sharp as ever. At one location, a shift supervisor tried to cut corners, claiming the envelope protocol was a waste of time. Riley held her ground. "It's about trust. Trust is never a waste." When the supervisor slipped up and a lost wallet went missing, the team saw firsthand what happened when the process broke down. By the last week, the change was visible. Managers started their own compassion check-ins with staff, small acts, free meals for struggling workers, public thank yous for extra effort. A few regulars asked for Riley by name, thanking her for making this place human again. On her final evening, Harrison surprised her with a drive out of the city. The air was cool, dusk turning the sky lavender over the harbor. He led her down a winding path to a weathered wooden bench, the seat carved with the initials H and L. He sat beside her, the silence comfortable, shared. "This was Lena's favorite spot," Harrison said quietly, tracing the letters. "She always said, a bench is just a piece of wood until it carries someone's memories." He handed her a small glass case, a keepsake for the violet petal she'd guarded all month. Riley stared at the horizon, feeling the full weight of what she'd accomplished. She was no longer just surviving. She was building something she hoped would last, for Kai and for everyone else who'd ever been invisible. Harrison placed a folder on the bench between them. "Tomorrow, we make this official, but tonight, I wanted you to see where it all began." The breeze stirred, the sky deepening. For the first time in years, Riley didn't feel afraid of what came next. Morning at the waterfront was bright and brisk, the air laced with salt and sunlight. Riley arrived early, hands tucked deep in her coat pockets. The glass case for the violet petal wrapped carefully in her bag. She traced the path to Lena's bench, every step feeling both surreal and earned. Harrison was already waiting, hands clasped on his lap, eyes lost in memory. As she sat, he nodded toward the water. "You brought change to places I'd written off," he said. "Lena would have been proud." He paused, voice a little rough. "She always told me, never let a procedure go blind to people. We forgot that somewhere along the line." He handed her a folder, heavier this time, stamped with Harbor Light's official seal. Inside was a formal contract, Director of Integrity and Care, a real leadership role, full health coverage for her and Kai, a salary she'd never dared to dream of. Harrison didn't look for thanks. Instead, he took out a slim envelope, passing it gently across the bench. "This is for you," he said, "and for Kai." Riley opened it, breath catching, as she saw a letter written in Harrison's careful script, and behind it, a health plan confirmation card already activated in both their names. Beneath that was a check, just enough to cover every medical bill, every back rent, every cloud that had hung over their home. The relief was so total it felt like sunlight after weeks of rain. "And one more thing," Harrison added, setting down a small velvet box. Inside was a replica of the glass case, just Kai's size, with a note. "Your mom's compass is now your compass too. HL." Tears slipped down Riley's cheeks, hot, grateful, unguarded. For a long moment they just sat together on the bench, letting the breeze carry away what didn't matter anymore. The old pain, the shame, the fear of being seen only for her worst day. Back in the city, Harbor Light's changes went public. Walt was officially fired, his misdeeds quietly but firmly acknowledged. Tip skimming, bad shifts, every petty cruelty. A tip repayment program rolled out, making things right for dozens of workers who'd lost wages under his watch. The Lena's Bench Fund became permanent, funded by a portion of weekend revenue at every diner. On her walk home, Riley felt a weight lift she'd carried so long she'd forgotten it was there. She stopped at a playground, dialing Kai's school to FaceTime him between classes. His face burst into a grin, eyes wide as he listened. "Starting tomorrow," she told him, voice trembling with joy. "Mommy will be home for dinner. And no more worrying about medicine." Kai waved the little glass case at the screen, pride glowing. "We're both safe now," he whispered, almost reverent. That night, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Riley fell asleep without fear pressing on her chest. The apartment was still small, but it was theirs. Every shadow felt softer, every future brighter. Outside the window, the city lights shimmered. Inside, mother and son slept easy, wrapped in the knowledge that even the hardest story could be rewritten. With a little courage and the right kind of help. Love was what pulled Riley through the darkness. Her love for Kai, fierce and quiet, and the memory of a stranger's devotion etched into a single pressed violet petal. That small, fragile keepsake had survived decades in a wallet, crossing paths with a mother just trying to stay afloat. In a world obsessed with policy and procedure, it took the ordinary acts of holding on and letting go to remind everyone what mattered most. Repair wasn't just about money or public apologies. It was the way Harrison faced his own company's failure, the way he listened and changed, not with empty words, but with concrete actions. It was Riley sitting in a break room, too scared to speak, and later standing in front of a boardroom, voice steady, reshaping the way strangers would be treated for years to come. She learned that justice isn't about erasing what happened. It's about seeing it, naming the hurt, setting things right in the open, and letting those who'd been silenced become the new stewards of care. Riley's new job was real, with challenges and hard days. But each morning she touched the glass case with the violet petal and remembered. Honesty requires an anchor, even if that anchor is just a faded keepsake or a quiet promise to yourself. At Blue Harbor, Dee smiled every time Riley visited. The staff called her the compass, a reminder that sometimes it only takes one person to nudge the needle back to true north. The Lena's Bench Fund covered a dishwasher's car repair, a line cook's medicine, a waitress's rent when her hours got cut. Sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest acts of decency. Harrison, too, changed. He showed up in person at the diners, listening more than he spoke. He'd sit on Lena's bench in the evenings, grateful to be remembered for something more than numbers on a ledger. Riley found herself reflecting on all that had happened. The humiliation, the fear, the relentless grind, and the sudden turn toward hope. She realized her story wasn't unique. So many people carried hidden burdens, made invisible sacrifices, chose right when it would have been easier to walk away. What mattered was that, even on the worst days, a single choice could ripple out and change everything. To anyone listening, Riley had this to say. To me, this isn't just a story about a waitress who chose honesty in hardship. It's proof that unconditional loyalty to your child, to a memory, to your own best self, isn't weakness. It's the strongest force there is. If you have a keepsake that reminds you to stay kind, or a memory that anchors you, hold it close tonight. That's how we stay human, even when the world tries to make us forget. She invited anyone with their own story of quiet courage to share it, knowing that one person's small act could inspire another. She thanked the people who listened and believed, the ones who built benches and funds and second chances. If this story brought back a moment when you chose what was right, when no one was watching, share it in the comments. Your story might give someone else the courage to do the same. And if you'd like to hear more stories of hope and healing, feel free to like and subscribe, so this little community of kindness can keep growing, one story at a time. As the sun set over the harbor, Riley walked home, her heart light, her compass true. She was, at last, not just surviving, but living, loved, and seen.